Good morning. There she is.
Here I am. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I think I got it.
Yeah, I think Robert will be along in a bit. It's not being good, is it?
It's a good mirror.
Yes.
Mm,
Stirring up. Mm.
good. How's your morning so far?
Oh, it's been a big downer.
Downer,
Yeah,
you say? Okay.
yeah, yeah. It's so interesting. Yeah, just listening to good morning, Robert.
Robert,
Still eating.
okay. So continue. Um,
Oh, just listening to HR this morning. Jim Garrison is quite an amazing guy. He just really is. And he has this huge history with Russia. So he's been walking through um, what's happening with Ukraine and with Alexei Navalny, um, and giving a very different perspective than the one we usually get through the media and through the normal resources we have.
cool.
And it's just really, really sad because I do think that he's right. We're seeing the United States truly stepping back from Ukraine as we did from Afghanistan, as we did from Iran, as we did from Vietnam, and the impact of that on our reputation and stuff is going to be quite huge. And it's just, I mean, yeah, it's just really, really interesting and sad. And what's coming forward, I mean, what Putin is creating with China is going to be different, but not much better. I mean, the whole thing is that we're still seeing, in my view, we're still seeing all these powers that be struggling for power over and trying to get rid of what they don't like. Just period. They all have different ways of doing it, but it doesn't matter. That's really what it all comes down to, is that we're creating a space for us and getting rid of them, whatever the them is defined as and looks like at this particular point in time, when we all should be paying attention to the earth. So we're really undercutting our ability to deal with what is the real issue, which is our planet is dying because we're killing each other. It's just amazing and very sad.
Well, I think there's a reason for that happening that was alluded to in something I read this morning in the news. But there are evidently a number of surveys about climate change that have been going on for years, and for many years, there was a high percentage, and let's say the 35% at least of people who denied it. And suddenly that's shifting. The percent who truly deny it has gone down and way down into the teens.
Yeah.
But there's a new category. And the article called it doomism.
Yeah.
People who have just simply are giving up. And giving up on life, because there are a lot of other questions in these same surveys that asks about their activity, their planning for the future, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's, the big answer sort of came through is, we don't care.
Yeah.
We're,
Yeah.
well, as we used to say, before the big one hit California, surf until
you die.
surf until you die, or simply hang 10 all the way to Salt Lake City. But
Yeah,
no, it's that attitude that is becoming very real, and it's with the younger folks. That doesn't seem to be affecting our baby boomer generation. But the Z's and the, I don't even know the name,
X's, yeah, millennials and all that, yeah.
but the younger ones, the 30s and even 40s. And so the article at the end, was, I can't remember what magazine it was in, but very, succinctly tied it up by saying, it's virtually impossible to do any meaningful legislation when
Yeah.
so many people just really aren't into it. They want to live their best life as long as they can.
Yep.
And so that's a very interesting, well, and so the reason I not equate, but at least they're similar, with the war efforts is, well, let's see, if we can have a quick fix over in Ukraine, yeah, we're willing to support that, but no, not in the long run. It's not worth it.
Well, it gives a purpose too, even if it's temporary, you're defending something that always feels better than feeling like you're losing. So,
Yeah, and
it gets rid of lots of people. War is one way to really reduce the population pretty quick.
that definitely is the trend over there. And it's just like Israel seems to be just saying, just holding the line because they know something similar is going to happen.
Yeah.
And also they may completely have us over a barrel in terms of financing and that sort of thing. I mean, there are all kinds of rumors and suggestions about, the real tie that Israel has on the United States, or the Jewish population. I don't believe any of that, but on the other hand, I do believe that there's a lot to this sort of general malaise that's sweeping across the population of the world.
Yeah.
For good reason.
Yep.
I mean, the atomic bomb is, the threats of atomic warfare are still there.
They've increased. They've not gone away.
And just remember the salad days when that was the only one we had to worry about.
And we dealt with it. We actually dealt with it.
But deal with it because it was just one thing.
Yeah.
And I believe what is ours to do is tell a story that we would prefer, acknowledge the potential of a story that we prefer, speak it into existence, and that is our response, and it will have an effect.
Yeah, thank you, Ani, because obviously this conversation needed to go in that direction. But I thought it was important.
It is. Oh, I'm not saying don't.
Fine, what's going on? I mean, it's not a small shift in sort of
define a trend. Define a pattern. Define it, and create what is sustainable. Create what we desire. Create what we see in our imagination, and speak it. And that is our job. And
I have to believe if we really reignite the love we have for Earth, that we'll stop doing a lot of the stuff that damages it. I just have to believe that that's true.
Name the things off the top of your head that we are doing that damage it.
Oh, well, that's just a huge list. I'd rather play with what we can do to shift it, because the will to stop the stuff that we're doing is just not there, because it's so tied to convenience and to our lifestyle, and it's really hard to deny yourself stuff, just to be a good person, and it's hard to live another life given how so much of our life is enmeshed in what's not
I I know
in
one,
line with life. So yeah, so I mean it's a big shift for a big change that's going to happen or are going to have to happen.
there,
So I
there,
mean the only thing I can focus on is just trying to bring back as much life as possible, and the soil is the key piece to that. So I mean it's the only thing that I have found that gives me joy actually when I start getting involved with it. It's just really exciting. It's fun. My energy goes up, all of that. Everything else is just a downer. So it's just,
could,
I'd rather spend my time where I'm happy.
could we focus a few minutes on the word convenience?
Yeah.
Because that that seems to be, tends to be, I don't know what word for it, but it's what would the word be for convenience, which everything is centered around our convenience, so we don't have to do an extra anything. Well, and that doesn't work because we need to do stuff. We
Yeah.
need to stay in tune. We need to keep thinking. We need to keep looking and planning and writing and seeing what affects what. I mean, it's not about convenience. What would the word be?
Well, convenience has gotten us to the place where we don't spend a lot of our time with making our food or getting our food or doing much with our food. I mean, you don't have to do anything. You just walk up to somebody and give them money and you're fed. I've been spending some time on Japanese television and well, YouTube stuff. And oh my God, the food it's just huge, huge in Japan. And the things they do with it, they're playing with it in amazing ways. It looks weird. They put weird things together. And it's everywhere. I mean, you can just, it's everywhere. And a lot of people in Japan and in China don't have homes, mostly in China, but Japan really flavors that a lot. You can get on a bus in a sleep and have a sleeping compartment and sleep for the 10 hours of your bus ride. And it's designed that way. There's no chairs. They're designed with sleeping pods. You can go into a mall and rent a place to work and sleep.
Really?
Really.
That's
Thanks
fascinating.
of them. Thanks of them.
And and this is in China and Japan?
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. So I mean, you can live your life without having a house. You can sleep in these pods, you can buy food at the mall, and you go to work. You don't need a place to be at all. That's surprising.
Do you have, can you give the context for that? Like how long it has been, where it started? What?
Oh, I don't know, but it's very institutionalized, so it's been going on a long time. I mean, they've really designed their society around it. There
Yeah,
are there are sleeping pods. You can go into a comic store and get a little bunk where you can sleep and read your comic book
Where you can sleep? What? What's the rest
and
of
read your comic book.
it? Read your comment.
I mean, it's designed for people who are working in the city and actually living in a farm someplace, but they can't get there during the week. So they live in the city without a house, basically, taking care of their basic needs. And then some of them go home. I would bet some of them don't. That's just their life. And you're certainly not married. You're not having kids in this kind of space. You can't do that. So it's a young people's
Has
experience.
has that been given a name, a category, a title?
Well, I imagine it has, but I don't speak Japanese, so I don't know how they refer to it. I'm sure there's the name for it. Mark, do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, maybe not a name, but certainly I'm familiar with it, and it's the sort of the idea that you sort of rent on demand or pay on demand for what you need
Yeah,
in terms of a sleeping
everything.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at it because of the homeless situation we have. I mean, we could use those pods. It would be probably way more economical than what we're doing. At least it would give people a sense of privacy. They can't keep stuff because there's no place to put anything, but they themselves would have a safe, clean place to sleep. Now, I don't know how all those things are cleaned. That was the other thing I was thinking. There's got to be a whole army of people that come in after everybody and clean the space up, wipe it down and all that kind of stuff. But uh, it's definitely a different way to live. And I know the Chinese have been doing it and the Japanese have been doing it for a very long time because moving people out of the farms, they just, there's just no, they're so used to living in families. And when they moved to the city and lost that ability, they just had to do something with them. And so sleeping pods have been there for decades,
Wow.
but they're not on the street. People aren't sleeping on the street. They're taken care of in that way, which is sort of a step up from what we're doing.
What comes to you, like almost artistically? What movement, what images, what feelings come to you when you're in this frame of sleeping as you transport to your job? I mean, the home and work. I mean, I don't even know what to call it, but there's an integration that's different now.
Oh yeah, there's a frenetic sense to the cities that I've seen. I mean, really crazy. And that would make sense to me if you're not connected to family and have that sense of quiet and center, which has been so, I mean, it was yesterday was so weird. I started watching a movie called Shogun. I didn't finish it, but part of that was the entrance into Japan by white sailors and that kind of stuff. And it's pretty ugly. What was happening with sailing at that time was the deliberate warfare that Portugal was putting on to manage to try and take hold of trade. So in the Asian world, trade was something that you wanted to have happen, and everybody just did it. In the Western world, trade was something you controlled. And so when the Western world and the Asian world collided with trade, then the Western world really took over. And the Asian world was surprised because it wasn't like what they did. And so they were sort of vulnerable. And so there was a lot of really ugliness around that. But what was nice or interesting was to see this portrayal of the Japanese society, the beauty that it had, the order that it had, the fragmentation that it had in terms of little fiefdoms and how they were all trying to manage to get along. Then this invasion of this other whole different system and how they were dealing with that. And then to
Well,
go from that to modern Japan that looked like more like New York than anything else. Just, I mean, huge buildings, no trees and plants, lots of neon, flashing stuff all the time, 24 hours a day, filled with people. Just, thousands of people everywhere at all times of the day and night doing stuff. Just craziness. I mean, we're not designed for that. there is no sense of the peace that you get in nature, no sense of the peace you get with family. No place to relax. I mean, the sleeping pods and the working booths were a place to be quiet and alone. They kind of, cut out all that. You could go in there and be by yourself and peaceful for a few minutes. And you paid by the hour. It's just,
That's amazing.
it is.
That's a social advance for sure.
Well, it's a social change. I don't know that I'd say advance, but a social change.
Right.
Yes.
Right. It's brought on
Yeah.
by not an advance. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's not sustainable. We don't have the resources to live that way. That's kind of what we're discovering. So it's all temporary, but it's going to be a big change for lots of folks.
As you were describing that scenario, my consciousness shifted to the 100 acres in 2014 that I was in 3.5 months alone with no cultural trappings whatsoever. Nothing. Nothing was in my view or sound. And the experience of that,
Yeah,
I'm forever grateful for, because I came to know myself as human nature. I don't identify with our culture very much.
well, the old Japan pictures from the Shogun had such a sense of spirit in everything they did, and then the new Japan, there's no, it's not there. The pride, the honor, the intentions of being a good person that kind of permeated that culture, no matter how you defined it. Even if they were opposing, they were still trying to be good in their own belief system, in their own world. And I mean, I guess it's there still in the cleanliness. Everything was clean. I mean, there's no garbage anywhere. I mean, that's amazing. So the cleanliness is a balancing thing. I mean, that was true in Disneyland. It's just true. I mean, I spent 10 years cleaning people's houses, and I can tell you that it makes a huge difference, the cleanliness. It really keeps people present, and it does a lot of things. But the speed, the frenetic activity, and the lack of center is just huge. Just really, really amazing.
I keep having this thought pop up. It's time for another pandemic.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we were talking about war at the beginning, that's one of the things that happens. People start to fight, and you sort of reduce the population back to where it's manageable again.
No, by pandemic, I just mean isolation, self-reflection, people
Yeah, yeah,
thinking.
I don't know if we would so easily go back into that, though, actually. I mean, we've sort of allowed ourselves to do that because we didn't know what else to do, and now people have other ideas, and they would not go gently into that good night, I don't think.
But home, cultivating home, there's nothing more important than that.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, we should consider that idea.
That's why
I
it's the
mean,
coming home
what does
project.
what does that mean when you have a large population that has no concept of home?
Mhm.
Or
Yep.
they do, I'm sure, because it's innate in our psyche. I would think. Can't say that as a professional authoritatively, but it would seem everyone has some sense, because my cat has a sense of home. I'm sure that people do. But what has it become? People are very protective about their cars, at least in Atlanta, so I can speak from Atlanta. You don't get in their way. This is an antidote. This morning, the president of our HOA and I we have a 13 townhome street, which we own and are responsible for and are liable for. And we just decided this morning, we're going to keep cars from crossing through because, you know, who needs them? And man, the people, there are a lot of people who take that very, very much as as an affront.
Yeah, it's an entitlement.
Because the cars are where they live, I would assume. The people are now staking out the perimeters of their sense of home. And perhaps not much else counts for anything, matters, but I don't know where to take it. I'm opening that up as a consideration. What is home? Because we have, for the past couple of years, we have pretty much depended on the sense that we personally feel a sense of home within the earth, and meaning the natural earth, the natural, the patterns, the seasons, the cycles of life development. That's very earthy to us. It sits very closely. I've got to come to grips with the idea that there are literally hundreds of millions of people now who have never had that experience.
Who have never had the experience of what?
Nature.
Of the natural world in any way, shape, or form similar to what I've had.
Yeah.
And what we've often described to one another in terms of you just did, Ani, your 100-acre wood.
Yeah.
There are so many that have never had that experience. So what are we actually trying to accomplish in the consciousness of humanity when some parts of it that seem so critical and important are absolutely non-existent?
Yeah.
Or at least I don't know how existent. But I do know that I get a sort of a glazed look, sometimes when I bring up some of the things that I used to do as a kid. Hiking off first thing in the morning in a pair of shorts and nothing else, and going fishing with our hands and with our buddies playing until dinner. We were in the mountains. We just disappeared. And that was fine.
The thing that struck me in my hiatus in the woods was no sign of human, no cultural trappings. That was the first thing that hit me. It was all nature, and humanity was not represented at all. And there was just something about that is an actual experience. I mean, it's a different feeling. And I can't do words well with it. It's just realizing, I guess, I am nature. That I am like a tree, because I had communication with a couple trees, and we talked back and forth, and even with nature, why did you make us? Why are we here? And the answer I got was like a co-creative phenomenon, that humanity and nature, that humanity is here to help co-create with nature. Just amazing, beautiful wonderfulness.
I think that's certainly the capacity that's there. That's why we're intrinsic.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And we just have to take that responsibility, which so far we've shucked.
Well, one of the things I'll back up into again is, oh shoot, it left me.
It'll come back.
It'll come back. It was all about co-creation.
Mhm.
Because I asked nature what through the trees, why did you make us? I already said it. You know, but to take what is and enhance it, make it more of itself that serves
Mhm.
life.
Yep.
Well, the question that's in my mind right now is simply, is there the capacity today in many of the people I see around the city in even understanding what you're talking about? I mean, I'll just give you a quick example. I often tell people that when I lived in Oregon, I would go up to the, the Cascades and by myself and go away for a week. And I never told anyone, I mean, I just went. And I tell people that, and the first thought is, well, you didn't have a cell phone, did you? How could you possibly do that? And we live in a different consciousness now about what the earth is. My consciousness at the time was I felt a whole lot better up there and safer and at home than I did in Eugene, where I lived. That's why I had no qualms about doing that in the winter as well as in the summer. And it was just a totally different feeling. But people today, the hikers and their Gore-Tex and,
So
especially, the high cost equipment, wouldn't understand that. And they have cell phones with, and specifically, they have, locators and 911. I mean, there's a button you can push. It's
to
like,
get help if you need it. Yeah.
so I would think because of that, the idea of self within the cosmos is a very different idea for someone who lives in that realm of consciousness. It would have to be. It's more than convenience, Ani. It's safety, security.
I don't
Just
I'm getting
habit.
what you're
Just
saying.
habit. If you're a young kid and you've lived to work and you sleep in a pod and you eat at the restaurants and you go to work, what's going to happen if you decide not to do that? You wouldn't even know how to not do that. You wouldn't know what to do to not do that. You wouldn't, how do you get an apartment? How do you take care of an apartment? We have that problem already. We've got lots of people who don't understand how to take care of property.
Right.
Just plain taking care of, the place they live in. It's somebody else.
On our street, the kids who are buying some of the townhomes.
Right. You talked about
I have a lot of I have a lot to do to help them out because they know nothing about keeping a house.
Yeah. 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 It's somebody else always did it. So they don't have any understanding of it or commitment to it. It's not something they've ever had to include in their own life. You know, I have thought for a long time, actually, that both China and Japan, but China in particular, has they lost so much with Mao, and in moving all these people into cities and severing the family relations, which have really kept China whole in a lot of ways, that they're going to pay for that so dearly, because that kind of connection is just not there with the younger folks. They just have not had that experience. And so their children won't have it either. It's going to be a huge dissolution of Chinese society. And I think they're just starting to see it. I was they're trying the efforts that the Chinese government is making with kids who have this addiction to their cell phone is huge. I mean, they have camps they send kids to try and wean them off of the cell phone. They have trainings that they do and stuff, just because you've got single kids, right? They didn't allow families to have more than one child. So you've got these kids who are all alone. Their parents are at work. What do you expect them to do? They got a cell phone. It becomes their family, their life, you know? And then the society says, well, they're addicted to it because they don't care for the community. Well, they don't care for the community. They've never had a community to care for. They've never been involved in one. They have no sense of what it is. I mean, these are huge issues that are just going to have incredible impacts and effects. I mean, Confucius was really right. You have to have a good family, a good home in order to have a good society. And they've really not paid attention to that.
And all of these are factors in terms of how we collectively deal with anything.
That's right.
I mean, you know, even small things like providing housing for people who are homeless in this country, but climate change, it's just unimaginable how any kind of consensus can be built.
Well, what do you do? I mean, they don't, it's not easy growing things. You know, it's just not. You have to learn a lot about that. I mean, I've been
there are kids doing that. I must admit, there are a lot.
Yes, there are. Yeah. Yeah. I do see them here. I don't know about other countries, but yeah, I do see a lot of them here really working to learn that. I think that's one of the miracles, actually, that the American Indians have been able to hold as much of that history as they have been able to hold, given how intentful we were to destroy it. It's the one thing that could save parts of this country anyway, because they do have some memory of how to do that. Not a lot, but some. Yeah.
I really had a vision for a garden here at the senior community, and it was a vision. You know, it's like it's return to the land, return to the land, and they shut it down. You know, and I don't understand that really, because it's so simple and so good to grow things, to grow food in the ground. I mean, what is more basic to us as a partner on the earth?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been thinking in terms of what is spiritual activism? I mean, there's activism for all kinds of different things. Gender, you know, way of life. Anyway, but how do you, what's the activism for, you know, allowing the spirit to develop and then to, you know, expand and increase, and I'm coming to the point where it's just, you got to be absolutely persistent and just keep it up. whatever you're doing, just keep it up.
It goes on in here. It's birthed out of our beingness.
Well, but I'm talking about, what do I actually do? I mean, it works within household, and I have neighbors next door, and we have very close, worship. It's not really services, but activities, behaviors that we share, and several different neighbors. I mean, it's that kind of thing can be set up. But what happens beyond that? Because if there's truly going to be an outreach, it has to mean something to people. And it does. I mean, people can respond very quickly and then they'll just forget. So you have to be persistent and come back and again and again.
I'm still holding the vision
Yeah.
for
And there's personality stuff. We kind of forget that when we talk about all of this. But when you get into spirit kind of eliminates those barriers that we put up between ourselves. And so it really accentuates the impacts that people have on us because we don't have those defenses. And so the reactions can be equally strong. It's certainly been my experience in several churches that I've been in, including the one I'm in now. That you have to do your personal work. You have to take your personal responsibility, and you have to really work on. This is just a huge lesson for me because I'm like everybody else. I may be better than, or better, I don't know if that's a word, but more skillful in not being caught by other people's issues. I can kind of dismiss them and see the good in people anyway. I usually hang on to the brilliance that people have, and then the rest of it I can just sort of let go, and I don't focus on, and I can kind of manage around it and stuff. And I really had the experience this since January, about how that contributes to keeping things stuck. That without engaging in the issues that I knew were there, without really going to those people and saying, look, this comes up in me when we work together. Can we figure out a way not to do that? Because I did not do that, that stuckness made it hard for people to be present in a situation. They brought that old stuff into it. And therefore they reacted from that place, not really from what was happening presently, because they weren't present. They were still back there with all that stuff. So it's a huge responsibility to do that work. And we're not trained in it. It's not comfortable. You're not supported in it. In fact, everybody will tell you not to do it.
It has to be self-initiated. Nobody's gonna, come to us with how to do it and when to do it and where.
But you have to take the responsibility when you see it to go initiate it. That's the thing, because you do see it.
Yes.
And that makes you not a great person to be around sometimes, because you're putting other people, in their stuff, and they don't like it. They haven't agreed to do this. But it has to happen, because if you don't do it, it really impacts everything. I watched ER go through that and have a huge hiccup, a clash of major personalities that just really set the whole thing back. And it made people afraid to do anything. And then you get into as Joe called it, the tyranny of the ungoverned. Where there's no real rules, because there's nobody that you'll allow to make the rules. It has to be all of us. Well, that's a fantasy. All of us doesn't ever do anything. A few of us do something and the rest of them come along. And if nobody's willing to do it, then nobody comes along. They just fester amongst themselves.
Well, self-governance. If we could get our our hearts and minds and attention and energies around
That's the talk.
self-governance.
But you got to govern yourself first.
That's it. Self-governance. I mean, that's it. That's the point.
Yeah,
That's how life is constructed.
that's right. That's right.
Police
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we abdicate that. You know, we abdicate it for ourselves. We want other people to abdicate it for themselves, because if they do it, then we don't have to. I mean, we've got this whole thing going on about how not to take that responsibility and that engagement.
Yeah, well, it's incumbent upon us to do the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because the focus is self-governance. I mean,
But it's not easy, I have to tell you.
no,
It's not fun being hated.
it's easier than not doing it, because not doing it, just everything falls apart like hell in
All
a
right.
basket.
You can go off into your, it feels like you can go off into your little 100-acre woods and be just fine. Let it all fall apart. That's the temptation, trust me. It is much easier to just say, I'm going to go away and not deal with it at all. Let them puddle in their own mess.
But what I'm saying is, even now, let's monitor our speaking to create what we desire to see and feel.
That's a part of it, but the
No,
emotional part is
I'm saying now, us, you, me, us.
yeah. Well, I'm speaking you, me, us too. I'm not, this is not hypothetical by any means. And Mark, the resource that you gave last week on the emotional wheels was really lovely. That was really nice to see. They have these wheels that label emotions, and then they cut them up in different ways: positive emotions, negative emotions, to give names for some of the feelings that we have, which is sometimes really hard to do. Actually, you can feel the rub, but to give it a name is not such an easy task. Yeah, there's a whole meditation around that, but yeah. I mean, we don't deal with our emotions, and we sure don't deal with our emotions between people at all. Very little skills there. I think, Robert, you're probably the better amongst us, have the most skills, the most practice.
I beseech you, I beseech us, let's not leave the unfinished just hanging there to slap us in the face sometimes. Let's speak in ways that actually draw together, bring together, create, illuminate what it is that works, what it is we desire that is life-friendly as we speak, like I'm trying to do right now.
Yeah, well, this is, I believe we're doing that.
But I do too. And
But
so
I mean, you, Kathryn, we're doing it. Let me tell you something. My wife and I decided 3-4 years ago that we were going to speak the truth to one another. And there were arguments. There were huge arguments for a while. And I'm not saying that's completely past. There, I can get some strong words, face strong words by coming through according to my nature, so I think, and it bounces off her nature. But what I'm finding's come out of it is this, it's just a whole different life.
it's trust.
In other words, working with these things together, and some of them didn't look that good at times, has actually come forth to, I mean, I'm not even going to use the usual terms. I mean, it's a trust, it's a harmony that is just spectacular and leads to us being able to do things together and with other people that, are just beyond what we'd ever considered before. That's what I'm talking about, being persisting, and, just being with something and not giving way. And Kathryn was talking about the same thing from a little different perspective. And I consider that to be extremely useful
I agree.
as a practice, is what one does in engaging in, in our social life, because we have to learn how to be together
Yeah.
as a people.
The good thing about marriage is that there's sort of an agreement that keeps you together. When you're in groups, it's much looser. It's
Yeah.
much easier to just walk away when you're hurt instead of to stay there through that process and work through it instead of just staying there in spite of it, which is a different form of being together. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're working at this with others. I mean, some large groups of people that are interconnected by Zoom,
Mhm.
don't live right here. And the same things come up. And we're very carefully navigating ways to I mean, Kathryn, you talking about ER and how that is having a rough situation right now, perhaps in terms of
They're
it.
actually are ending the group and restarting it in a different way. Yeah.
Really?
And that
Yep.
sort of thing happens, but
Yeah, it's gone
these
as of
turmoils
yesterday.
are important. I mean, if you stick with it. Now, if you just give up, I mean,
That's
okay,
right. It's the sticking with. Yep.
and you're dead.
Yep.
So, well, what's happening? What's the transition in Humanity
Well,
Rising?
there is a transition ER, which you can join if you'd like. And it's and Joe has killed ER. He really felt Earth
Well,
Regenerators. It
ER.
is a group. I don't know if you were part of it or not. But it was founded by Joe Brewer 4 years ago or so. And part of that founding was the writing of a book that he did on redesigning Earth. And because he didn't want to be the focal point of leader, but he was, nobody else could step up either. And when they tried to, then there were ego issues and other issues that got between them, and that just made a mess. So a lot of people created a lot of friendships, did a lot of good work. And so there was a month-long discussion about what to do with, since this place, where the Mighty Network that held Earth Regenerators was going to be closed down, what they were going to do. And so they created Transition ER, and people can rejoin and start all over. So some folks are doing that. He had 4,000 people, I guess, pretty much. So he started a new thing, design school. So some people are there, and some people are in Transition ER, and some people are in both. And some people are nowhere. And everybody's grappling with that. I'm seeing the same thing in Regen Cascadia. It's been amazing to listen in on the conversations as they're pulling themselves together and making Regen Cascadia a thing. And the sticking point is always governance. How are we going to manage this thing? And I've come to a way of thinking that when we think about governance, always it feels like we're pulling things together, like we're making a whole. I'm not seeing that as a useful analogy anymore. This is where I really do believe that Verna's and Fritjof's understanding of networks is a more interesting place to go at this point in time, because it really is about networking. People are not co-located at all. So to start to see roles that need to have happen is different than trying to control things, which governance tends to bring forward.
Mhm.
So I'm really not a fan of that kind of conversation right now. I'm more interested in understanding what roles are being taken to manage the roles, to manage the relationship between roles, is the way in which governance happens in networks, I think, at this point in time.
I
But
agree.
it's hard to get people to see that, because boy, they just want to, they want community so hard, and they want it, you know, a whole bunch of us all together kind of thing, but they're not co-located. It's just not like that. So it's just,
What does co-located mean? That's important here,
they're,
and I don't know the,
they're not in the same place. I
oh,
mean, the Cascadia thing goes from Vancouver to Oregon.
hmm.
Okay, so there's little towns in there where you have a group of people who live together. Nobody else does. And they're all working on the same river. They all want the same river to be whole and healthy. So there is some working together, but you're not controlling it. You can't actually, because each place has its own unique needs. And so when you're talking about governance, that kind of melds all that stuff together instead of allowing it to be free the way it needs to be in networks, at least at this point in time.
So self-governance to me is just being a node.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm a node in a network.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's my biggest job.
yeah. And
I
I think
can't do more than that.
that reframing would be very useful. I do believe it really pushes agency, and it pushes relationship, where governance sort of abdicates that to
Yeah,
some set of stuff, whether it's rules or people.
yeah, because
Yeah,
governance is like over.
yeah, yeah,
You know, and a
yeah,
node, I'm alive. I'm part of it. You know, let's do something cool.
yeah. And we're working for the whole. We're not working for our little piece. Yeah,
Right.
I just think there's lessons there that we need right now that governance is going to cover up and make more difficult.
Just,
So what I hear you saying, that it's Venn diagrams and not the hierarchical structure.
Yeah, yeah.
Van, guys,
Then VEN
Intersections of
of
activity.
circles. Yeah,
what does Ven mean? Ven.
Somebody's name, isn't it?
probably. Yeah, it's just the name of the diagram that is composed of concentric of interacting circles, and where the circles interconnect is the vital piece. Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. Mark, do you have thoughts on this? You've been in a number of these groups, so I'm sure you have thought about some of this.
If the question is around this idea of governance, then that would be, I think, similar to what you're saying, Kathryn. That would be the place or the idea to transcend, and to instead recognize and honor that it's about the conditions that are inside of a group, or and the conditions that a group is in, that really does afford what group members do or what the group does together. And instead of trying to govern or coerce or have power over the actions of others, create the conditions for one word might be pro-social, but definitely like group beneficial and context beneficial actions to occur for the group, for the place.
So talk a little bit about pro-social, because you've been taking classes and stuff in it. How do you see pro-social connected to governance?
So this will take me a moment to kind of dig into, or to feel into that question. Well, one thing that is certainly part of the foundation of pro-social's sort of thinking and approaches is Eleanor Ostrom's core design principles.
Yep.
And I would say that they are helpful and a potentially a step in the direction of less bad than what we're doing generally. yet if that is where we stay, we won't get there. So for me personally, this might get a little bit weedy, but the core design principles have come out of studying existing ways that humans are doing things in particular cases. And by doing that, Eleanor was able to see patterns that seem to afford these groups in these case studies more health or more success together than ones that didn't have them. However, my beef with it, if I was to use that language, would be that it comes out of studying human groups, which even while there might be groups doing it better than others, there's still really no healthy groups in terms of us being in groups that can be on this planet as part of the whole web of life for any meaningful length of time. And so that's why, so therefore I say it's insufficient, and it needs to, instead, where sufficiency comes from is not just studying humans, but studying the patterns of all of life. And so that's why in the framework I have, it is essentially coming out of the patterns that we see in all of the living world, the fundamentals of all the living world, rather than just that of humans, which in somewhat definitionally we know isn't effective because of what we're doing together to each other and to our environment. So all of that is to say, I think there is some good work being done in pro-social. It will benefit me to be patient in that space so as to build relationships, but ultimately I will be wanting to direct attention to things that will need to develop within that group, within that idea, within their ideas and within their approaches. Because from my perspective, if that doesn't happen, they won't be successful in advancing their mission, which is to evolve a world that works for all.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. That's been kind of my sense of it too. It's a useful tool. It's not sufficient.
But you know, no tools are, or no groups are at the moment, and so it's kind of a case of, in some ways, like choosing our poison, choosing where to spend our attention and energy in places that have greater potential than others. So if I look across all of the groups that I've had exposure to, I'm quite happy at the moment to be giving a larger amount of attention and energy there than in some other ones. However, this is in some ways at the moment a reason why I stay independent, because I don't think these groups have enough of the story yet, and I don't want to either be seen to be fully associated or aligned with one of these, or to do all of my work in them, because I think I'm accessing something a bit more fundamental than many groups are at the moment, and I want that to be what I'm seen as doing, rather than to be seen as a member of a specific group that doesn't have enough of the picture.
Have you looked at GaiaNet at all?
I haven't, I don't think.
It's the only one I've run into so far that appears from the outside to be really quite functional. And they're just starting to let people in, so that may change some of that. And one of the reasons why I feel networks is a better way of thinking about governance right now than anything else I've seen, including Eleanor Ostrom. I think she's useful for sure, but the focus on relationships is really the key. And the relationships with the roles is really useful because you're valuing the person who's taking that role and not getting caught in the personality of the person that's taking that role. So it allows you to step back a little bit from that, and to still see value even if you see irritation. And I think that's just a useful practice right now, because we've got so many people who really don't know each other coming together trying to do really amazing things. And so you can get caught in personality really fast. But if you see the role they carry, then you can at least step back from some of that. It gives you a distance, a way to manage that space and to pay attention to what you need to do instead of the reactions you want to have.
Thanks for bringing that up. I think that's so important. That's where I've seen success in some of the groups that I partake of. It's very clear that they're providing an opening, a capability in a certain way.
Yeah.
They're the only ones who can do it. Everyone accepts that.
Yep.
They can be abrasive in other ways, and it's okay.
Yeah. Because that especially in the church space, there's this huge movement to be nice and kind, and that's being used sort of as a whip, because dare you be sharp or impatient or angry or frustrated, or then you're totally not being right in the human space.
On the other hand, Mark, did you have you were trying to get in there?
Sorry, I just looked at the time and I have to leave. But as I do, maybe rudely, I would echo this relationships networks sort of piece that you're speaking with, Kathryn, and point to the organization level, which is to say that there is something of a guiding nature within that network or relationship that is necessary for coordinated activities to occur, and that's a needed piece as well. So with that, I will sort of somewhat rudely.
Before you leave, I want to give you a reference. So look at Value Networks by Verna Ali.
Value Networks by
Verna Ali. It's only available on Kindle.
How do you spell her name?
VERNAALLEE. And she spent her whole life talking about networks and understanding how they happen in organizations. The book is very corporate oriented, but if you can get out of that, you will find she's very clear in that book about how to understand the networks you're in and to understand the value that is passed through that network or not, and where those roles are that provide value, to discern that and then to be able to work with them. So she's really brilliant around that. She's very brilliant. She's a personal friend. So yeah.
Thank you. See you
You're
later.
welcome.
See you next week.
Okay.
Bye.
But before he left, I wanted to bring it in, but just humanitarian principles, the International Red Cross and the 7 humanitarian principles that they have come up with. I mean, that's a thread. That's an integrative thread that I might have shown it to you before.
Yeah, we've talked about it.
Yeah, but humanity, neutrality, impartiality, universality, voluntary service, independence. I mean, that's like, it's a thread and it weaves through my being. I've been cultivating that. It's just luscious.
Yeah. When you're working with lots of different people and different cultures, you've got to just let it all go.
What? What are you saying?
I said, when you're working with lots of different people and different cultures under crisis, you just have to let all that go, all the things you think you know, and all the ways you used to do stuff, and be able to open up to how they are familiar with that before you bring what you're familiar with it. I mean, that openness that you talked about, the neutrality, just
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Principle.
that's what, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are all basics.
yeah, that's what that does. It just opens you up to what's present in the place.
I like it a lot.
Yeah,
But it's been a pleasure. I think I'd better.
Okay.
yeah, it is time to go, isn't it? Yeah,
Nice being with you, but you both.
it's been good. It's been good.
All
See you
right.
next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.